the real political agreement. As the President explained very well, it was a political agreement between the United States and the Kingdom of Great Britain to take the territory away from Venezuela. If you will, it was the first Monroeist consensus. Next December 2nd, one day before our consultative referendum, the 200th anniversary of the Monroe Doctrine. Well, dispossessing Venezuela, stealing Venezuela's territory, was the first Monroeist consensus with the British Crown. And why didn't Venezuela participate there? Venezuela remembers that it was living an internal situation of great weakness as the result of internal struggles. Venezuela was really going through a process of vulnerability and asked for the support from the international community. But that is where the empires found the best moment to seize the territory. 1 century later, in 2015, the Obama decree institutionalizes one of the most aggressive periods against our republic that our republican history has known, the illegitimate, illegal blockade against Venezuela, to recreate situations of internal weakness. Because that same year is when the ExxonMobil announced a world-famous oil discovery in the disputed territory. I was going to ask you about that. I wanted to know if after finding this made Guyana change its attitude against Venezuela. Completely. In 2014, we were leaving a process of good offices, and the good officiant dies. Venezuela addressed the Secretary General of the United Nations in 2015 with express letters, both from President Nicolas Maduro and at the time from the Foreign Ministry, asking him to resume the good offices, and Guyana at that time said no. No more good offices, curiously coinciding with the ExxonMobil discovery. And here comes this whole process that Venezuela has led with much wisdom, with much patience, insisting that the Geneva Agreement is the only instrument that will allow for a practical solution, as the nature of the agreement states, practical and satisfactory for both parties. Practical and satisfactory for both parties, not for one party. That is why the nature and the legal object of the Geneva Agreement is contradictory with a sentence of the International Court of Justice, because the International Court of Justice will not give a practical and satisfactory solution for both parties.
We're going to address this issue later on because we have several questions, and as we said at the beginning, there are other journalists in the world who, as we are talking about a while ago, some of them do not know very well what is happening, and that is why it is so significant that we see the other journalists think on behalf of their people about the reality of Venezuela and Essequibo Guyana. We have, for example, Victor Hugo Morales. You know, the Uruguayan journalist who lives in Argentina, a great soccer expert and a friend of ours who is a journalist who will ask you a question from there.
The fact that there is a history of Great Britain behind Guyana determines that this involvement still exists. And therefore, the one being discussed is not only the one who represents Guyana's political interest, but other interests are represented at the same time.
Hello, Victor Hugo. Well, in fact, we have always reviewed it, haven't we? Great Britain, the United Kingdom, an empire at that time, was the greatest spoiler and plunderer of territory all over the planet.
They know that well because of the Malvinas Islands.
The case of Malvinas, the Palestine case, which is very similar, how 18 years after the fraudulent award of 1899, in the case of Venezuela, the Balfour Declaration was issued, where Great Britain handed over the territory of Palestine to Israel, and you can see how the territorial dispossession of Palestine has been progressing. Very similar to the processes that took place in the Essequibo territory, in the Malvinas case, and other territories in the world where the United Kingdom dispossesses territory and gave it to those who did not belong. It is a doctrine that continues to be in contention today because you realize the interest of the United States in this territory that is in controversy and in the sea that is pending delimitation. You realize that the interests there are those of the United States. And you know that in the Washington Treaty of 1897, which was the great political consensus to dispossess Venezuela and which was consummated in the fraudulent award of 1899, implies that this territory is given to the United States by the Crown. They say we give it to you, as happens with the energy interests that are present primarily in the territory in controversy, as well as in the sea to be delimited. They are U.S. interests and are primarily Western interests. So we are really in the presence of a global war for energy resources.
There are people who consider that the International Court of Justice is the highest. That is, before heaven there is an international court. For some, however, Venezuela considers that the International Court of Justice has no competence. They say it has no jurisdictions in this field. Even the government has said so. So one wonders why Venezuela keeps going to the International Court.
Since the foundation of the International Court of Justice, the position of Venezuela has been very clear as to not recognize the compulsory jurisdiction of the court. Only 70 countries in the world recognize the compulsory jurisdiction. That is to say, they recognize the automatic jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice to settle matters of international interest. In this case, Venezuela has never recognized the compulsory jurisdiction, and it has not recognized it precisely because we had the precedent of the fraudulent award of 1899 and this controversy. The only way that Venezuela could attend the court is when it manifests its will to attend the court. The Geneva Agreement is also very important because the Geneva Agreement assumes that both parties must agree on the means of settlement of the dispute. Both parties must agree on it. So much so that every time a good official was to be appointed, both Guyana and Venezuela had to express its willingness to agree. And the last event, which was under the current Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, is that the personal representative that he appoints before raising the matter to the International Court in violation of the Geneva Agreement was appointed with the consent and the manifestation of will of both parties. Venezuela cannot be obliged to a means of solution that it has not given its manifestation of will. So this is an issue that is a historical position in not recognizing the compulsory jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice, and that is why it is part of one of the questions of the referendum. Vice President, you just mentioned that there are interests behind it. There is ExxonMobil now, and it would seem that Guyana is continuing the history of dispossession of the territorial that the United Kingdom started. In Georgetown, we recently saw a photo of President Irfan Ali in the area that Venezuela claims as its own, and it is very close to the limit or the de facto line, because it cannot be called a borderline because it is a territory that is not established as such. And we saw him dressed as a military man. Meanwhile, here in Venezuela, we saw the Minister of Defense dressed as a military man because he is in the Minister of Defense, but with a leaflet of the consultative referendum in his hand, the complete map. What is the reading between one and the other? You have said that Guyana has been escalating its aggression. They have tried to generate a matrix that Venezuela, or a narrative that Venezuela is the big, powerful country with great resources that is attacking Guyana. You know very well that it is very clear to the world who is the victim here, in the sense that Venezuela has been a victim, hasn't it, of the government of the United States directly in 2015, as well Obama's decree.
First of the British Empire.
Exactly, but in 2015 there is a decree that lays the foundational for the criminal and legitimate blockade against Venezuela. And you start to see the process, and you also see a process of Guyana, where their leaders begin to have been very aggressive attitudes towards Venezuela. We cannot forget that grandeur in 2015, one of the most anti-Venezuelan presidents Guyana has ever had, even declared that Simón Bolívar is the thorn in Guyana's throat. Simón Bolívar is the thorn in Guyana's throat. And there, these authorities become principals of ExxonMobil. When they decide to go to court, it is because the ExxonMobil orders them to go to court. Let us not forget that the ExxonMobil has paid the lawyers for the defense of Guyana in the International Court of Justice. When we were there precisely because there was a hearing, well, they arrived there in ExxonMobil airplanes paid by ExxonMobil. There is an instrumentalization of Guyana by ExxonMobil, and its authorities are working as ExxonMobil employees. This decision of both the president of Guyana and its parliament not to go to negotiations, not to engage in dialogue, is part of a provocation script against Venezuela, what we have called the drums of war. And our Minister of Defense, as you have rightly said, has come out in promoting the consultative referendum to the Venezuelan people. That is a constitutional right of our constitutional order, where Venezuelans have the right to be consulted on essential matters of national life.
Just about that, and I come back again to the International Court of Justice, not because I'm personally very interested in it, but as the act one has put one's cards on the table as well. Well, recently Guyana went again to the International Court of Justice, as it is trying to pigeonhole us there, asking that this instance should disregard the consultative referendum of December 3rd, and at the same time, Luis Almagro, the ineffable, or some call him, Secretary General of Organization of American States, aligned himself with Guyana position. He criticized the referendum and asked Venezuela to respect Guyana's decision to the court.
This request for provisional measures to stop the consultative referendum in Venezuela is one of the most tremendous cries of desperation we have seen from Guyana. Really desperate, because there is no basis for the International Court of Justice to interfere in the internal affairs of Venezuela, of the internal order of Venezuela, the constitutional order of Venezuela. They were really showing a lot of desperation by pretending that the court can stop a consultative referendum, where the Venezuelan parliament, the Venezuelan National Assembly decided, unanimously approved, to call and consult our people. And well, then they went to the electoral power and set a date for December 3rd for our people to be consulted. How can an International Court of Justice come to stop a consultative referendum in Venezuela? This really has no legal or juridical basis whatsoever. It is only demonstrating not only Guyana's desperation, but also that Guyana has become a true colonialist conclave, an imperialist conclave of those who are its allies. Who are Guyana's allies? Because they claim to be a victim, but who are Guyana's allies? With whom does Guyana carry out joint military exercises in this region threatening Venezuela? Nothing more and less than the United States Southern Command, who supports Guyana. Where did they go to ask for the consultative referendum to be stopped? To the Organization of American States, of which Venezuela does not belong because it has a terrible record of coup d'etats, assassinations, invasions in Latin America and the Caribbean. Those are Guyana's friends, the great powers of Guyana's friends, and they threaten Venezuela because every time they carry out a joint military exercise with the Southern Command and the Pentagon, what they want to say is Venezuela. In other words, they are doing an open threat against Venezuela. Their partnership, I have said, their partnership is to attack Venezuela between the United States and Guyana. Vice President, if we look at the timeline of the year 2015, when Barack Obama signs the decree indicating Venezuela as an unusual threat to the security of the United States, months later, this thing happens, the famous ExxonMobil announcement, and then the whole aggression escalates. Do you think that this could be linked? Sure, it's concatenated, Madeleine. It is the fifth period that the president has called the conspiracy against Venezuela. They try to recreate a situation of internal weakness with the criminal blockade against our country, the economical blockade. And the Venezuelan people gave convincing signs in the Unión Nacional We have been victoriously overcoming the worst difficulties of our republic has ever known. They wanted to recreate the same conditions of 1899, and then, as I have said, they try to validate as a title of possession of that territory because they have a precarious possession of that territory. They tried to validate a title by giving it to a fraud. That is absolutely null and void. It does not exist. Fraud cannot have any legal effect on any situation, much less on this. And that is also why in the 1966 Geneva Agreement exists, because it was assumed that there was a claim on that. If it had not been assumed that there was a claim, there was a problem with that fraud. That award had to be a product of the political convenience between United States and the United Kingdom. The Geneva Agreement would not exist, but they intend to kill, to assassinate. But the Geneva Agreement says that it is in force until it is a practical and satisfactory solution for both parties on that territorial dispute. Yes, by the way, Guyana says that this dialogue from Venezuela was already very annoying, and therefore he has not going to good efficient. But from Argentina, we are going now to Cuba from another journalist colleague from Radio Rebelde from Cuba, Ana Teresa Varia. Let's listen to her.
Greetings. This is Ana Teresa Badia from Radio Rebelde in Havana. The first thing I wanted to ask you is what is related to the reasons of legislative constitutionality that Venezuela has for this referendum on December 3rd in the midst of accusations of alleged illegitimacy. Also, when analyzing Venezuelan politics, in recent times we noticed that both the government and some sectors of the opposition have condemned during the last hours the position of the Organization of American States in relation to the issue. How do you interpret this position and this action?
Thank you very much, Ana Teresa. You know very well that this is a national issue, not an issue of the Bolivarian government of Venezuela.
The nation state.
The state of the nation. Where also in the Barbados Agreement, it is stated that all political factors or opposition government assume this issue as a single issue of national unity, which is the defense of the territory of the Guayana Esequiba. And that there is a national consensus and the whole country, and therefore the importance and relevance of the referendum this December 3rd. The whole country is focused on this situation.
Even people from the opposition who have spoken in favor.
It is a cause, a common cause. It is a common cause, of course, and the opposition, we saw the statements of Gerardo Blay, for example, about the declarations of the ill-fated Almagro. Really a shame because Luis Almagro, he never stops making a fool of himself. Let's say that he never misses an opportunity to show ignorance because he completely ignores the history of our Latin America and the Caribbean. He does not know it, and every time he speaks, he shows it. But he does not only not miss an opportunity to show his ignorance, but he also does not miss an opportunity to tell his masters to the government of the United States in Washington, look, here I am, I'm a good employee, as I'm told once again at the OAS. He is the number one employee of the employee of the month, because he's always looking to please their masters.
Out of the Orinoco, but well, let's listen to another question. I leave that concern there because there is another question from General Bill Hamill, who is a Mexican journalist, by the way. He's the president of the Republic Broadcasting System of the Mexican state.
Vice President, here in Mexico we value and support all popular consultations and mechanisms of direct democracy to support decisions as important as the cancellation of an airport project. In the case of Mexico or in the case of Venezuela, this dispute with Guyana, which, well, has gained Latin American and international relevance. My question is, from your point of view, how will the consultation to be held next December 3 reinforce Venezuela's position in favor of maintaining the mediation of the United Nations in this conflict where there are evidently the interests of powerful transnational companies in the oil sector. I would also like you to tell us, what can the Mexican state do to reinforce the sovereignty and dignity of Venezuela in this case?
Thank you, Genaro. This also brings us to a question that Ana Teresa had made and we didn't answer about the constitutional basis for consultation. Well, our constitution is very clear. Sovereignty resides in the people, and the people also have the right. This is found in Article 71 of our constitution. The people have the right to participate in a consultative referendum to address essential issues of national life. And here we are talking about the territorial integrity of Venezuela. We are not talking about just anything. It is the territorial integrity that is being consulted to the Venezuelan people. What results from this consultation will be a mandate for the Venezuelan state. What results from the consultation will be a mandate for the Bolivarian National Armed Forces. It will be a mandate for all the institutions of the Venezuelan state.
Even if it is not binding?
It is a referendum to consult the Venezuelan people to see what the Venezuelan people think about these 5 questions. And then when Genaro says, ask what Mexico can do, we have to add voices to defend our Latin America and the Caribbean as a territory of peace, because there is really a threat from powerful transnationals, from the government of the United States, from Guyana, who are threatening. It is not Venezuela who is threatening. There is a lot of money behind Guyana's campaign, claiming to be innocent victims, but their friends are the ones threatening other nations in the world. They are not the victims of the world. Their friends are not the people being massacred, and I am referring to both of them. I'm referring to the ExxonMobil, which pays them, and which pays for the defense before the International Court of Justice. I am referring to the Pentagon and the Southern Command, which carries military exercises against Venezuela together with Guyana. It is an imperialist position. It replicates those colonialist methods against Venezuela, threatening this region. So the call is for our region, the countries of our region, to raise their voices and ask for a negotiated solution. It is very serious that Guyana says it is not going to talk. It is very serious that Guyana says that it's not going to negotiate. What is Guyana thinking? What is Guyana thinking? When they know very well that the International Court of Justice, the unilateral claim they presented, is contrary to Venezuela in the legal way that denies the expressions of Venezuela's will. They went without having Venezuela's consent, and they should have had Venezuela's consent because that is what's stated in the Geneva's agreement.
Vice President, excuse me, negotiating applies to condominium, for example?
They are proposals. What scenarios? These are proposals that were even presented at the time of the negotiations with Guyana, but the question behind this is, who benefits from the exploitation of these natural resources? When you analyze the data in Guyana, they begin to have revenues from oil production and exploitation from 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. The social impact that these revenues have had has been zero in the social indicators of Guyana. This was shown in the equality indicators, in human development indicators. They are the same as in 2015, and especially in the provinces in the hinterland of Guyana, extreme poverty is rampant. There you realize, and we have shown it, that Guyana's oil tax regime is to benefit the big transnationals. 2/3 of the revenues go to the big transnationals. There when you compare that the oil tax regime of Guyana and Venezuela, Venezuela's oil tax regime is much more noble for our people in terms of benefits than what Guyana has. A concrete example, royalties paid to Guyana, 1 or 2%, royalties to Venezuela, 30%. There is a clear difference. Then, for whom is Guyana exploding? Why is Guyana going to a confrontation threatening Venezuela with the United States? Is it for its people? No. And when you talk about condominium I was telling you that there are proposals that have come up at different moments of the negotiation, but Guyana has already been very clear about its objective. Guyana was very clear on its objective to benefit the big transnationals and not the development of the people or Guyana or Venezuela or the Caribbean people. There's a very interesting fact, Vice President, and it is that when Venezuela went through nationalization in 2005 and the companies that were here began to move to joint ventures, the only one of the few that did not change is ExxonMobil. In 2006, Rick TeleSUR was the CEO for the Obama administration. He was still the CEO of the ExxonMobil until 2016, and then he became Secretary of State. So that is what the puzzle is, which is very obvious. It is already the policy of greater aggression during the Trump administration, and TeleSUR as his Secretary of State. It is what this controversy is further fueled, and when Guyana assumes very radical positions of turning its back on international legality, not only violating the Geneva Agreement, but also violating international law by offering territories in a sea that has not been delimited. And let's leave Mexico right now, Vice President. Now we are going to Dominican Republic with Juan Carlos Espinal from Red Social TV. Later on, we will elaborate a bit on what you were saying. Who will benefit from this oil exploitation? Will this also benefit the people of the Caribbean? But let's listen to Juan Carlos first.
How to understand, how to realize that on the one hand, the State Department of the United States of the government of Joe Biden, who is insisting on re-election, is using the government of Guyana to dispute territories that have been sufficiently discussed in terms of international public law. On the other hand, the Barbados agreements of the discussions and debates of the dialogues carried out by the government of President Nicolas Maduro in Barbados have been agreed with the Venezuelan opposition for the presidential elections, and then these referendums arise. How can we from Latin America and the Caribbean understand the geopolitical ambiguities of these corridors and at the same time, on the other hand, stimulate the internal dialogue in Venezuela?
Well, in addition to the matrix, in Venezuela we hear that the issue of the Guyana Esequiba is an electoral juncture. I think that's where it's heading to.
No, it has nothing to do with it, because remember that this situation worsened in the month of September when Guyana announced that it was granting concessions in a sea pending delimitation. Very serious, very serious. What does that mean, Vice President? After defining the land boundary, it is possible to start a negotiation process on the sea. What has happened here?
The territorial sea.
The maritime territory. What has happened here? First, Guyana is even prejudging the results of the International Court of Justice, because by taking possession of that sea pending delimitation, they are taking for granted what will be the result of the process being carried out in the International Court of Justice as a result of their unilateral claim. They have already reached a decision, and therefore they have gone to the sea. But it also not only prejudges, it violates international law and international maritime law, because this should be submitted to a process of consensus and negotiation. They are handing over the sea. What they lack is to rule over the airspace. I have said it because they are going even further, and that is why that was recently in September. President Nicolas Maduro, in view of the situation, in view of this process, where they are going to the International Court of Justice without having the voluntary consent of Venezuela, giving that process is being made in the granting of concessions in a sea pending to be delimited, well, the situation arises where the Venezuelan parliament, the National Assembly, addresses this and decides to summon the Venezuelan people. They decide to consult the Venezuelan people. And with the United States making statements in support of Guyana, in some way, they are impacting Barbados' agreement, because There is a very clear position in the Barbados Agreement, answering a little bit the question of this fellow journalist from the Dominican Republic, Juan Carlos. In some way, it is also adding fuel to the fire, which is stoking a situation in which Guyana is very clear in the script. It is very clear. Guyana is not heeding the calls that have been made for dialogue. Guyana is not heeding the fact that they are bound by the Geneva Agreement. They are still part of an agreement that is in force. That agreement cannot be terminated by any of the parts. That agreement ends the day there's a practical and satisfactory solution for both parties. And then what did Guyana pretend in the International Court of Justice? Venezuela has said that there was a triumph. We do not consider it a triumph, but that the court reviews the actions of the United Kingdom since 1835, or the Paris Arbitral Award for Venezuela is something positive. Yes, in November 2022, when Venezuela went with the figure of preliminary sanctions, Luis Guillermo, making it very clear that he does not recognize the compulsory jurisdiction over this dispute, but he was asking very basic questions. Who signed the Treaty of Washington of 1897? Guyana did not even exist as a republic. Guyana was a colony. When the fraudulent sentence of the Paris Arbitral Award of 1899 was issued, Guyana did not exist as a republic. It was a colony. And Venezuela was saying that here an essential third party is missing, which is the United Kingdom, an essential third party. We always made our position very clear, but we wanted to somehow uncover what was happening. And there, well, the court does not admit the preliminary sanction, but says that in the end it will study the United Kingdom's actions. It also says other things in that decision of the year 2020, of December 2020. The court says to Guyana, I am not going to review here the maritime territory. That is why it is very serious what Guyana is doing, deciding over a sea that is not delimited and where it was also excluded in the claim that they had in their unilateral
Now,
demand.
you mentioned in your last media presentation, well, that the royalties from oil exploitation do not reach the Guyanese people, as you just explained. Well, there is a concern about this issue among other colleagues that, for example, in Barbados,
They do
which
not
is a country that is a friend of ours, we are going to listen to David, our colleague David. David Denny. Go ahead, David.
My name is David Denny, and I'm the General Secretary for the Caribbean Movement for Peace and Integration, and also the General Secretary for the Friends of Venezuela Solidarity Committee in Barbados. We are very supportive of your government's position to hold a referendum in relation to the issue between Guyana and Venezuela. So we are very supportive of that initiative. But my question to you would be to ask you, if we can develop a situation that would allow us as Caribbean people to work together and to develop the type of industry and working relationship that both the Venezuelan people, the Guyanese people, and the wider Caribbean can benefit from the resources that are between Guyana and Venezuela? That's my question.
That's a very good question, because I do not know why there is an agreement with Trinidad and Tobago, and there is the issue of the blockade imposed by the United States on the Caribbean countries.
An immoral blockade, because to impact the Caribbean as it has been done through the blockade of Venezuela, just look at what happened with Haiti. Haiti is practically a failed state. And that was after what? After the brilliant idea they had of blockading Venezuela, were the financial flows to finance import social programs in Haiti simply dried up, and well, a very serious economic and social situation, a real humanitarian crisis in Haiti. David's question is very important, and it is the question that gets straight to the core of the issue. And I repeat, Guyana is openly working for the transnational corporation.
Not for the Caribbean.
Not for the Caribbean. I would like to see the president of the Guyana design a program similar to the Petrocaribe. That was what I was going to ask. I have already asked about it. If you remember, Madeleine, at the CELAC European Union Summit in Brussels, we pointed out in our intervention. I would like to see among those who are here who is willing to design a program like Petrocaribe that would benefit the peoples of our region, because we have the right to grow as a region, to develop our great potential as Latin American and the Caribbean. This is a region called to be a great power, but the position of Guyana that victimizes itself is not. Our resources are for the transnationals, not even for our own people. Look, there's a very important fact, Luis Guillermo. Look for the report presented by Guyana in 2015 in the World Trade Organization. There, Guyana knocks down all these arguments that Venezuela impedes its right to development, that Venezuela is imperialist, that because Venezuela already has resources, it wants to take away from them, a barbarity that they have expressed. But in that report, they state the positive impact that Petrocaribe had in Guyana. Because let us remember that Guyana also benefited from Petrocaribe in a very important and suitable integral policy of Commander Chavez to add cooperation for development. But Chavez was very firm in the defense of this controversy of our right over the Guyana Essequiba, and Chavez was very firm in saying that in the Geneva Agreement. But at the same time, he added this program. In the report of the World Trade Organization, those numbers are stated. The positive impact of Petrocaribe had on the economic and social development of Guyana. The question that David has asked is the main question. Why is Guyana refusing to negotiate? Why is Guyana refusing to reach a consensual agreement with Venezuela? An agreement that, as you have just said, for example, just now the exploitation of the Dragon gas field was signed with Trinidad and Tobago, a brother country, a neighbor country. Why in this case we cannot reach a similar agreement that have a positive impact on the Caribbean? And on the contrary, they go to imperial France. They are going to benefit the big transnationals and other people. The social data of Guyana is hidden. They do not publish it because they know we have seen through the data, figures from the United Nations organizations on human development and equality, and they have hidden it.
We will have to check the account of Irfan Ali, the president of Guyana, to see how he's going to do.
And from Barbados, Vice President, we are now going to another Caribbean country that is very concerned about the development of the situation, and this is related to another colleague who is in Belize. Let's listen to her.
If there is an affirmative vote in the referendum approving the integration of the current population in the Essequibo region, and they are to be automatically considered Venezuelans, how soon will that process begin after the vote?
Interesting, the questions from the colleagues, isn't it?
Yes, very good. This refers to the fifth question of the creation of the Guyana Essequibo territory, so that we can give attention to our population, because it is our population, and we are going to see that this population can have complete attention. So those who want to have their identity card have the right to have their identity card and access to programs.
Is there any idea about how many Guyanese would like to be Venezuelan?
Not exactly, Luis Guillermo, not exactly. But we know that poverty is widespread, and well, it is an area that requires integral attention. What is this?
Vice President, we're practically in the final stage of the program, but here in the production team, we wanted to play a little bit seriously. We know that you play ping pong.
It had to be one of Luis Guillermo.
But you have seen her playing. She's very good. How long has it been since you last played ping pong?
In China. I played in China.
Recently?
Recently, when we were in China. I told you not to come up with this one of yours.
They didn't set the table, so we are going to have to ask questions that look like ping pong. We are going to do ping pong. We are going to put some words, and you, with your intellectual rocket, are going to give an answer. Is that okay? I'm going to start with one.
Plunder. Luis Almagro. Dismal.
Irfan Hali.
ExxonMobil employee. International Court of Justice. We ratify our historical position.
Esequibo.
Territory of Venezuela. I leave you because you are insisting on saying it.
So, the question, I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm one of those who think that our A-star, I'm Venezuelan, our A-star on the Venezuelan flag is the province of Guyana, as Bolívar declared it, which include the territory of Esequibo at the time. Then the question is...
And in the 1819 Constitution of Angostura incorporates the province of Guyana.
Exactly, because of the 17th, Bolívar declares it. And 1 year before, A-star.
Our Guyana Esequiba said it. Now, the Arbitral Paris Award, a fraud.
Geneva Agreement?
The special law for the sides. I add, last consultative referendum, mandate of the Venezuelan people. Well, Vice President, thank you very much for being here with us time and time again. It must be said the Venezuelan government has called for dialogue, and on the ping-pong table is the proposal of President Nicolás Maduro for a meeting with the Guyanese counterpart Irfan Ali in any Caribbean country to resume the Geneva Agreement, and the Caribbean and Latin America is a region of peace and dialogue, and that is the best weapon. This has always been said, and when the electoral campaign began, what we heard from the people was that we are a country of peace. We're not a country of war. We do not like war, and we are going to the consultative referendum, which is our best weapon. Nor will we fall into provocations. Our out is peace. It has always been the way, and our Bolivarian diplomacy is one of peace.
I still wanted to.
To do what?
To continue with the program, because above all, up to here this program, which have called Journalist Speaks. Of course, this is a redundancy for journalists who ask questions, but well, journalists speak. So thank you very much.
Thank to you, and for your time. Thank you.
And you for following us, of course, on TeleSUR, which has inaugurated this series of programs with the Vice President of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, and with such an important topic, do not hesitate that we will have a program of great magnitude with a significant person such as the Vice President. Thank you for joining us.
We share your feelings, exalt your accomplishments, and show your reality. Our approach is global and keeps us in tune with the peoples. Caribbean countries also get our signal. With enthusiasm, we will continue to broadcast for them. Because we are TeleSUR, the news broadcaster from South America and the Caribbean.
What's his name? Joyful!
TeleSUR is the voice that speaks up in defense of the people of Latin America and the world. For me, it is a media that offers different perspectives. It invites us to reflect and question the hegemonic narratives. From the fight against poverty and social exclusion to the defense of human rights and social justice. TeleSUR is more than just a television channel. It's a platform that celebrates our people's diversity. It inspires us to be more informed, more aware, and committed to the construction of a better world. Hello, welcome to From the South.
Deep gazes filled with struggles and stories. Struggles that transcend generation. Know the deepest realities through its protagonists on TeleSUR documentaries. Sunday. Only on TeleSUR.
Follow the most important global events through a comprehensive perspective. With a team of journalists in 25 locations around the world to convey our people's reality. From the South. Weekdays. Only on TeleSUR.
From the South is part of the TTTL of Trinidad and Tobago. We are grateful to be part of this television house and to be able to share news from around the world, from Monday to Friday. We keep connecting borders, because TeleSUR always gives more.
El mundo se mueve constantemente y todos los días se generan nuevos sucesos. Se mueve la geopolítica mundial. Nos preguntamos, ¿qué hay detrás de cada acontecimiento? ¿Cuáles son las consecuencias y cómo nos afectan? Ante estas preguntas, buscaremos poner el punto en la I.
In a world that doesn't stop, we give you space to keep up to date. Take a moment, breathe, and take care of your physical and mental health. Balance your well-being and guide your body. Only on TeleSUR.
We are here in front of the life, willing to create the way with the ideas in the destination. We are the echo of the forgotten, the fight of those who do not give up. We believe in the transcendence of stories and in the firmness of their walk, without lowering your hands and with your head held high, with the heart and the commitment in the skin, to show a fairer truth, where equality is real and not a piece of paper. TeleSUR always gives you more.
What's his name? Joyful!
Hola, soy Aisa García. Tú y yo tenemos una cita cada semana para conocer tradiciones, costumbres, valores, sonidos y ritmos, símbolos y el gran abanico de las expresiones culturales que nos forman y que tienen origen en el alma de los pueblos y nos dan identidad. Esto y más te contamos en Vidas, cada viernes. Solo por TeleSUR.
Deep gazes filled with struggles and stories. Struggles that transcend generation. Know the deepest realities through its protagonists on TeleSUR documentaries. Sunday. Only on TeleSUR. Every year, thousands of people leave their homeland to reach new horizons. A reality of those people who struggle for their freedom. Know the diverse causes of those who live between borders. Thursdays. Only on TeleSUR.
El mundo se mueve constantemente y todos los días se generan nuevos sucesos. Se mueve la geopolítica mundial. Nos preguntamos qué hay detrás de cada acontecimiento, cuáles son las consecuencias y cómo nos afectan. Ante estas preguntas, buscaremos poner el punto en la I.
What's his name? George Floyd!
Hola, soy Aisa García. Tú y yo tenemos una cita cada semana para conocer tradiciones, costumbres, valores, sonidos y ritmos, símbolos y el gran abanico de las expresiones culturales que nos forman, que tienen origen en el alma de los pueblos y nos dan identidad. Esto y más te contamos en Vidas, cada viernes, solo por TeleSUR.
Welcome to Interviews from Mexico. I'm Laura Carlson, and I'll be your host as we look at cutting-edge issues with the men and women who know them best, here on TeleSUR. The first month of the government of Andrés Manuel López Obrador has been very eventful and controversial. But that's not unusual. Most administrations come in with bold moves against corruption or reorganizing institutions to set the tone and put their marks on the new administration. So what will be the tone of this administration? Today on Interviews from Mexico, we want to talk about the actual deeds and declarations in these early weeks of the administration of Andrés Manuel López Obrador. And we're very pleased to have with us here in the studio a Gibran Ramirez. Gibran, thanks for being with us here on Interviews from Mexico.
It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Gibran is an up-and-coming young intellectual, a national commentator, and recently the Secretary General of the Inter-American Conference on Social Security. Gibran, you've been close to the transition to the new government and to the new president himself. What's your reading of these first weeks of the López Obrador administration?
I think, without a doubt, that there have been weeks of intense work. It's been a radical difference from previous presidents. It seems like it's been more than the first 100 days of the administration of Enrique Peña Nieto or Felipe Calderón. A lot of things have been done. They've touched a lot of issues because there has an authentic
and a lot of this
organization.
happened during the transition period, even before he took office, which is kind of unusual too, isn't it?
Yes, López Obrador began to govern before formally taking power. The best example is the consultation on the New Mexico City airport that, well, had an impact even in the markets, and notably political impact too, because it marked the tone of the new policy, and it did it even before taking office.
And it's kind of that consultation on the new airport was in many ways a direct confrontation, not just with the old government, which it was one of its pet projects, but also with the markets that responded in a powerful way. It was kind of a showdown of forces in that sense. And we've seen a couple of those in these early weeks. Were they intentional or was the response a little bit beyond what they expected?
I think the markets responded, they overreacted. this kind of a drop in the stock market sometimes it's not really caused by technical terms or by changes in the risk factor that are objectively probable. There is a lot of subjectivity. For example, the political risk analysts from the different firms in the market present their analysis of the situation, and according to those analyses, that's how big investors respond. Many of those analyses were terrible. They were catastrophic. I remember one, I can't remember from what investment company it was in particular, but it said there that Andrés Manuel López Obrador could use the consultations to keep himself in power indefinitely. It's what occurred to them to imagine at that moment.
Complete speculation.
Absolutely. It had nothing to do with political science, with theory, nothing to do with a serious perspective. It was the oligarchy's fears projected in terms of analysis, which is not the same as doing the real analysis.
So what's the possibility we're talking not just about overreaction, but about manipulation?
Yes, in a way, yes. I think in large part also because on the part of sectors of the right, they haven't understood what the change in government is about. But more and more, I should say, especially with the presentation of the budget, the annual budget, reactions have changed. They've seen that this is not a government of the extreme left. There isn't, for example, a plan for profound fiscal reformations. That's not there. So the markets have been calm, and all the catastrophic predictions that the peso was going to plummet have been proven wrong in barely a month of the administration, really quickly. And the peso is still appreciating to the dollar. Well, that's also due to international factors. And the expectation of the vast majority of the population is optimistic.
High approval rating so far.
Yeah, definitely. Higher than Vicente Fox, and it's interesting that Fox's approval rating was different. Since then, the media was sympathetic for the general feeling of hope. It was seen as a consensus. Now, there is an even higher approval rating and more hope with López Obrador, but the traditional media are against the new government, so it's seen as polarization. Even though around 80% or somewhere around that are hopeful about the administration of López Obrador. Well, in the Mexican political discourse, that's portrayed as polarization.
Yeah.
But I think that's not really the case in actual experience in Mexico today.
So we have this contradiction between what is actually a higher level of consensus than we've had in the past, but that's presenting itself, especially because of the media, as a polarization. And you can see that polarization in the society and in social networks as well. It's not just the media. So it's a particularly vocal and active opposition that's formed not just since he took office, but from before. Well, you mentioned the airport as one of the first measures, the consultation that took place before he took office. What do you think have been the other measures in these early weeks that have marked where this government is going?
I will point out several. One that I think don't have the main impact it deserved is the largest increase in the minimum wage in nearly 30 years. This demonstrates the social commitment of the presidency of the Republic. And second, social policy, which is the most ambitious that has been put forth in Mexican history. A third area, I'd say in general, and this is associated with the issue of the airport, is the predominance of political power over economic power.
Explain that.
This has been a real defining feature of the administration. In the case of the airport, the economic interest and the political interest of the administration of Enrique Peña Nieto were actually intertwined like a cartel, and the PAN was also closely involved. This economic power predominated over political decisions. Beyond the technical debate over the airport, it was really obvious that this was a major gambit of the most powerful economic interests in Mexico. In another example, the issue of gasoline where there has been a logistical crisis in gas distribution due to the decision to combat to the illegal exploitation of fuels. Well, some say that this wasn't a rational economic decision, that it will be cheaper to let them continue to steal from the pipelines that the fuel is transported in and not have the problems of distribution. It's true in one way that if everything went on the way it was, we wouldn't have these problems. And organized crime will continue to make money, which is another form of economic power.
Very strong one.
Of course. And probably there wouldn't be this inconformity in some cities of the country, but again, this strategy that the new president has defined, which involves the entire executive branch, considers guarding the pipelines, for example, by the army, a central strategic move, and also investigating financial operation. And although this may not be economically rational in the immediate sense, it prioritizes the predominance of a new politics that is necessary to build the new order that they aspire to. They're shaking up a lot of elements of the old order that in many ways was organized like a mafia, like a mob. And to do that you have to affirm the power of the state, which means an inevitable process of centralization the president is carrying out. That will be another defining feature.
This affirmation of the role of the state, especially faced with or actually confronting economic powers, it also brings up the issue of the short-term versus long-term impact. In the case of the gasoline and the scarcity of gasoline because of the change in the distribution system, there's a big outcry, there's a public outcry because it affects directly consumers on a temporary basis, and yet it's a restructuring of a distribution system in order to get at a broader problem. So what we're seeing possibly here is a president who's willing to take that short-term opposition or the hit, the political cost of some of those measures to really restructure some, particularly in the area of corruption. So you think that these kinds of measures will continue? I think you have to say too that even the administration admits there were some errors in calculation there in terms of what the immediate impact would be. And one of the things that has been different probably with this administration is that they actually did come out and admit that there were errors in calculation.
Yes, I think so. It's true that there are risks, and this is a cost that the federal government is willing to pay. There will be inconformity every time they set out to dismantle a major mob-like structure that involves distribution of resources, services, employment, which are the structures that operate in Mexico today. That's how it is. The current system is a system built on cartels and mafias. So in the system of gas distribution, stealing from the gas pipeline was a normal part of the system on a daily basis. That's the way it worked. Part of the demand was covered by gas taken illegally, and the way things are, part of the labor market for youth has to be satisfied by an infinity of criminal networks. And when those are attacked, there will be protests, and some households will cease to receive the steady income they were used to. The challenge is for the state to have a response to those concerns that come up, and without a doubt, will continue to come up during the whole administration. Now, I think there's a specific trait of López Obrador that makes him different from his predecessors. Politically, he can do it. Peña Nieto couldn't attack the illegal extraction of fuels. Why not? Because you have to have at least enough legitimacy to ask the oil workers union to collaborate, a union in which obliviously there are individuals complicit in those networks. Peña Nieto couldn't do it because the first thing that the union leader Carlos Deschamps will say is, how much did we contribute to your campaign? He'd say, remember all the different ways in which the union supported you, Peña Nieto. They could blackmail him. Also, there is the legitimacy of the votes, because Andrés Manuel is a leader. There is no doubt about that. For anyone, for example, Calderón, a problem with fuel that hits hardest for the urban middle class will bring a political crisis of major proportions. I'm sure that if it weren't for the personal legitimacy of López Obrador, this political crisis will be much, much worse. The government has to take this into account, because I don't know if it's an excess of confidence, but at least there is a lot of confidence that this legitimacy is going to last the whole time, the whole term. And if this task of dismantling mafia network is going to last the whole term, it will necessary to pick up the battles.
It's such a fine line to walk between what needs to be done in terms of restructuring and measuring the responses, not only in terms of public responses in opposition, like we're seeing now with the gasoline, but also the anticipated responses of organized crime and powerful interests, with such a huge part of the Mexican economy and political system involved directly in that crime. Let's move to the other point that you mentioned, which are social programs. This is the area in which you're working now. What do you see as the major direction and changes in social programs?
There is a part that is focused on youth. That is the Youth Building the Future program. It's about incorporating into the education system or into employment all the young people who currently aren't in either of those large areas of socialization by giving them a grant of around 3,600 pesos a month. This seems to me an important program.
I have a question about that, and there's a part of it that is actually providing payment to employers to provide a first job. How is that different from what Felipe Calderón did, which was essentially practically subsidizing companies to hire youth, and that actually, didn't have the kind of impact I think that his government would have liked?
Yes, that was a subsidy in the form of fiscal breaks in the case of Felipe Calderón that lent itself, because of the way it was set up, to hiring individuals who weren't exactly apprentices as if they were. That is to say, it was a way to make wages more precarious. In this other form, it's the government that's going to pay the wages the first year for young people who are in training. There is, of course, the risk that the same thing happens because there isn't a plan for a system of strict supervision. Why not? I suppose because it will cost a lot. It's true that there is a weakness there, and I guess the idea for dealing with is through the mechanism that the delegates of the government are the ones who mediate between the target population of this social program and the businesses in each region of the country that participate in the program. Now, it's not just businesses that are involved in the program. There will be some employees in public initiatives like reforesting the country. If I may, I will sum up the attempt of the López Obrador administration as a process of centralization to develop two major solutions to the problems of Mexico. One, peace and security, and it has been said that it will be the Secretary of Defense and the National Guard that will take the lead. And two, in social welfare. In addition to those programs, they have laid out a major challenge to the country in creating a decent health system. Here, there is a really big institutional change, but the goal is to have a universal health system that arises from the model of the Mexican Institute for Social Security, accessible to the general population, and that can cover access to the right to health of all Mexicans up to the end of this term.
That moves us into the work that you're doing now. As Secretary General of the Inter-American Conference on Social Security, tell us what this is. Many people haven't heard of the organization, I'm sure.
Yes, the Inter-American Conference is an organization of collaboration and technical research for social welfare. It was founded in 1942 so that the countries would exchange experiences in social welfare and to encourage a cooperative and conciliatory concept of social welfare. That is, where workers and employees as well as governments participate in some respects. And this, I should say, as a history buff, it arose as a part of a hemispheric attempt to prevent the rise of socialism in those years. It evolved, of course, into a place where social policy initiatives could be discussed. For example, the Mexican Institute of Social Security was born practically at the same time, but a little afterward, because the idea of it first came up as a project in the Inter-American Conference. So it's basically to research and discuss the challenges of social welfare, I'd say, in the 21st century, which are not the same at all as those that the conference has been discussing the past years. I think the Social Security institution, not just in Mexico but in the world, have fallen behind the times. I would like to see the work of the conference become much more intense, not only address concern of the member institutions and the member actors, like the unions that are also involved, but also it should speak to the public and to address these new challenges in social security that are not associated with labor, new solutions that are being proposed with particular urgency since the crisis of 2008 to address the fiscal needs of countries for instituting well-being, to examine universal basic income, in short, issues that should be discussed through the hemisphere.
So it sounds like this is really a platform for defining and modernizing public policy in the area, not just of health and social security, but of well-being and development, and for projecting Mexico's role in those critical areas that the entire region confronts in one way or another. How do you propose to do that as Secretary General now?
Well, I want to put a lot of effort into developing an area of research within the conference that takes advantage of youth, ironically underemployed within youth doctorates, who have trouble finding jobs to research in new labor markets. It's a new demographic area that it's urgently needed. Also, it's necessary for proposing ideal scenarios to being There is a whole worldview, the neoliberal worldview, that put forth a very ambitious intellectual program that had a political side, an economic side, and even an idea of human nature. And then after the breakdown of the neoliberal model in the 2008 crisis, there haven't been ideological alternatives to rethink well-being, to respond to all these ideas that failed. New ideas have to be proposed in economic and political terms, in social and philosophical terms. An idea of human nature that considers advances in science, not just economy, but anthropology, sociology. We have to consider all this according to the circumstances of all of America. What is the kind of social well-being, and ask ourselves what is viable form of well-being in the American continent. Not an illusion of an ideal of development with prefabricated recipes, but rather to think realistically about what kind of social well-being we can achieve here, with the structural limitations we face, with the way that the markets operate, with the level of development, let's say, and demographic evolution in our countries, as well as geopolitical factors. All of these have to be reconsidered. It's not just a matter of elaborating accounting formulas to redistribute pensions. It's about thinking about the system in another way, not just reducing inflation and macroeconomic stability at all costs.
Which have been the priorities up to now.
Exactly.
So it's a creation of viable visions.
Yes. That's what it's about, a vision created from the most general aspect to the most specific aspects of public policy. Antonio Gramsci said that a great intellectual is he or she who develops a thought from the philosophy of the subject to its implementation. I want the Inter-American Conference to be a collective intellectual that makes proposals from the conception and discussion of well-being in our countries, for which I'm going to invite all the countries of America, to public policies that can be useful for every one of the countries without regard of their current political circumstances.
Well, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of the program very quickly. Thanks for being with us, Gibran Ramirez.
Thank you.
And thank you all for watching. We'll be back next week on Interviews from Mexico.
We share your feelings, exalt your accomplishments, and show your reality. Our approach is global and keeps us in tune with the peoples. Caribbean countries also get our signal. With enthusiasm, we will continue to broadcast for them. Because we are TeleSUR, the news broadcaster from South America and the Caribbean. Every year, thousands of people leave their homeland to reach new horizons. A reality of those people who struggle for their freedom. Know the diverse causes of those who live between borders. Thursdays, only on TeleSUR.
Hola, soy Aisa García. Tú y yo tenemos una cita cada semana para conocer tradiciones, costumbres, valores, sonidos y ritmos, símbolos y el gran abanico de las expresiones culturales que nos forman, que tienen origen en el alma de los pueblos y nos dan identidad. Esto y más te contamos en Vidas, cada viernes, solo por TeleSUR.
The story goes, you're gonna make it if you try, and if you don't, may your life waste away, 'cause it's your fault. Like the sheen of the rotting fish, the glitter just dazzles. For everyone who's filthy rich, a million must suffer. So start your climb up the money tree. The best slaves are those who think they're free. starts with the state to divide and rule the working class to keep us broken, not building anew. Lessons of history revealed, organize or be displaced. The rulers have no solutions, only violence, wars and jails. Stick together and fight for your just claims. Workers united, we'll prevail. Oh, say, can't you see Rome is over? Oh, build the new, 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 oh, build the new.
What's his name? George Floyd!
Hello, how are you? I'm Jerani Flores from Gayer Body. Join us in this informative tour as we discover together how to prevent stroke, a medical emergency that occurs when the blood flow to the brain is interrupted, resulting in serious consequences. Let's start with the highlights of the week. Here they are.
Venezuela's health ministry and Russian biotech drug maker Geropharm plan to begin collaborating next year to raise awareness on modern approaches to treating diabetes, the company said after a high-level Russian-Venezuela meeting. Venezuela and Geropharm planned, among other things, to launch an information campaign, develop diabetes schools for patients, and hold scientific and practical conferences for physicians. Geropharm is also helping to modernize the Venezuela company Sprong Bio, which plans to start local insulin production in 2025. The company will be able to produce more than 3 million vials of insulin a year, which will guarantee the country's independence from insulin imports. Experts estimate that there are currently more than 2.25 million patients with diabetes in Venezuela, hundreds of thousands of whom requires daily insulin injections. The first vaccine developed entirely in Argentina as a booster against COVID-19, Arvac Cecilia Grierson, for people over 18 years of age, was presented this Wednesday after the approval of the National Administration of Medicines, Food and Medical Technology.
We are very excited, but the work doesn't end, because now we want to do trials in pediatrics to expand the indication of the vaccines and also use all this equipment to work on other vaccines. So we are happy that we have been able to accomplish what we said we are going to do, but always thinking about new projects.
The vaccine was developed jointly by the National Council of Scientific and Technical Research of Argentina, the National University of San Martin, and the Pablo Casara Laboratory. President Alberto Fernandez celebrated the approval of the Arvac Cecilia Grierson and said that it's another step towards the sovereignty of the country, as well as an example of the capacity of our people and of the joint work between the public and private sectors. More than 300 scientific professionals, 25 institutions, and 294 volunteers participate in the development.
In Processing Health, we will learn about magnetic resonance imaging, which is used to diagnose various diseases and provide us high-resolution image of organs, tissues, and blood vessels.
mRNA is a non-invasive technology that uses a powerful magnet and radio waves to produce detailed images of the inside of the body without the use of harmful radiation. It's especially useful for visualizing anatomical structures and detecting anomalies in organs and soft tissues. During an mRNA, the patient lies on a table that slides into a long, narrow tube. The magnet creates a magnetic field that aligns the heterogeneous atoms in the body. Radio frequency pulses are the emitted that cause the hydrogen atoms to emit signals that are detected by an antenna and converted into images on a computer. The MRI is used in a wide range of medical applications, such as diagnosis of neurological disease, musculoskeletal injuries, heart disorders, vascular disease, tumors, and more.
Let's now take a look at the week's important health days.
Important days. November 1st is World Vegan Day, which aims to promote health diet without animal products. Veganism is considered a way of life that shows respect for animals and the environment. November 5th, the International Day of Caregivers was established by the United Nations General Assembly in 2014. This day aims to recognize and raise awareness of the individuals who provide care for others in situations of dependency, temporary or permanent, thus enhancing their quality of life. November 6th, Anti-Malaria Day in the Americas, with the main objective of reaffirming the region's commitment to eliminating malaria and promoting initiatives to combat the disease. November 6th, Tourette Syndrome Awareness Day. It is a neurological disorder that is characterized by erroneous reaction of the body, manifesting itself with an intense pain, functional impotence, and trophic alterations in the extremities. During this day, various activities are carried out to inform and educate, as well as to promote research, early diagnosis, and proper treatment of this disease.
Let's continue. We are going to do deeper into stroke. We will learn about the symptoms, diagnosis, treatment, and prevention of diseases. We talk to the specialist in neurology to get practical advice on how to learn a healthy lifestyle and reduce the chance of suffering a stroke. Here it is.
A stroke is a serious medical condition that affects the brain. It occurs when the blood supply to the brain is interrupted by a clot or hemorrhage.
A cerebral stroke, also known as cerebrovascular accident or stroke in English, occurs when there is a sudden onset of neurological deficit, typically accompanied by a decrease in cerebral arterial blood flow.
There are different types of stroke, including ischemic stroke and hemorrhagic stroke. Ischemic stroke occurs when a blood clot blocks a blood vessel in the brain, thus impeding the proper flow. On the other hand, hemorrhagic stroke occurs when a blood vessel ruptures and causes bleeding in the brain.
It is crucial to acknowledge that this is the second most significant contributor to morbidity and mortality worldwide. In the world, by every 4 seconds, an individual experiences a cerebrovascular accident. Typically, this occurrence is preceded by coronary heart disease.
Stroke symptoms can vary depending on the severity and location of the event. Some common symptoms include weakness or numbness in a part of the body, difficulty speaking or understanding speech, vision problems, dizziness, and loss of balance.
It can manifest itself in many ways. Basically, there will be a decrease in muscle strength in the upper or lower extremities. You may also notice a decrease in the flow of language. The person may experience word-finding difficulties or an inability to complete sentences while speaking. In some cases, you may notice very specific symptoms. For example, the person may experience sudden dizziness, lightheadedness, or vertigo. There may also be spontaneous blindness in one eye. It is important to understand that the presence of these symptoms indicates a temporary or even permanent condition that occurs once the stroke is already established.
Stroke prevention is an essential to reduce the risk of suffering from the disease. Some steps that can be taken include maintaining healthy blood pressure, controlling cholesterol levels, quitting smoking, maintaining a healthy weight, and exercising regularly. In addition, it is important to be aware of any warning sign and seek medical help immediately if a stroke is suspected.
It is of high incidence and prevalence due to the fact that there are also risk factors that promote this pathology, which is very common. High blood pressure, which is one of the most common diseases in the world, diabetes mellitus, smoking, nowadays vaping, all these are risk factors that promote arterial disease.
The diagnosis of a stroke is made by means of a complete medical history and physical examination that allows the symptoms and signs of the cerebrovascular event to be identified. The blood is tested to measure glucose, electrolytes, kidney, liver function, and blood clotting. An electrocardiogram may be performed to evaluate cardiac function. Magnetic resonance imaging is also performed to identify the location, type, and size of the brain injury. Also, a CT angiogram to evaluate the circulation of the arteries of the brain and detect blockages or aneurysm. In the same way, Doppler ultrasound of the vessels of the neck is used to identify stenosis or occlusions of the arteries that supply blood to the brain.
When the person arrives at the center, a diagnosis must be made. The standard call study is the brain-computed tomography, and laboratory tests must also be performed.
Stroke treatment depends on the type and severity. We usually include a combination of medication, surgical procedures, and rehabilitation. Medicines can help dissolve blood clots and restore blood flow. Blood thinners help prevent fluid clots from forming and reduce the risk of another stroke. Antihypertensive help control high blood pressure and reduce the risk of another stroke. Endovascular procedures such as mechanical thrombectomy may also be used to remove clots. During hemorrhagic stroke, procedures such as coagulant clotting, substance embolization, and surgery may be used to stop bleeding.
The stroke protocol consists of a series of steps that are carried out in the assistance center, where it is based on the control and management of vital signs, under good monitoring and the administration of a drug, also known as RTPA, or Human Plasminogen Activator, which is a drug that helps to break the clot or break the cause that is obstructing the artery, achieving the rechanneling of cerebral blood flow.
Intensive rehabilitation is essential after a stroke to help regain lost function through speech therapy, physiotherapy, and occupational therapy. The sooner rehabilitation begins, the better the results usually are.
It's important to understand the warning signs and act quickly to minimize the damage, or better yet, to take preventive measures to reduce the risk of suffering a stroke. However, once you have a stroke, there are recommendations to make the process more manageable. We'll tell you about it.
Thank you, Jeremy. Now, Let's know more about some recommendations in the event of a cerebral vascular event. The most important part of the treatment is to make an early diagnosis. This is usually done when someone begins to feel numbness on some part of the body, blurry vision, dizziness, and ongoing headaches. Also, if you have a family history, the best thing to do is to have an annual checkup of your health to make sure that everything is in perfect status. Neuroplasticity, which is the capacity of our brain to create new connections, can be taken into account in rehabilitation or as prevention by creating an adequate stimulus. This can be achieved through therapy, aromatherapy, music therapy, or activities that generate movement. Also, experts in health suggest administration by intravenously magnesium because it helps to improve cerebral blood perfusion and reduce the after effects of this disease. Thus far, I accompany you today, Esther Moreno, talk to you and stay for more information about well-being and health here on Guide Your Body.
Go immediately to our positive note. In Bolivia, the national government announced that it's guaranteed the free treatment needed by people suffering from hemophilia, a rare disease that affects male and is hereditary. 201 cases were officially registered in this country. Details with Fred Morales.
It was officially announced that the state guarantees free treatment for hemophilia patients. It is a disease that normally many other places is highly neglected. With the cooperation and with the treatment for all of us, we coordinate with the services not only to give treatment, but we do treatment that is covered by the SUS, we do the dosage, and we do the monitoring and follow-up of the patient, also with the transfusion services. One of the characteristics of hemophilia is that it is typically presented as a severe case.
We have 201 patients here in the country, of which we have 80% who are diagnosed with hemophilia type A and 20% with hemophilia type B. We also have the degree of the severity that are mild, moderate, and severe. The largest number of patients we have is severe, and that is why, as a country, we have to continue working so that these patients in their entirety receive quality care.
This is an element that can lead to disability.
The symptoms of this disease are mainly hemorrhages. Why? Because these patients have difficulty in the clotting factor. We can see that there are blends mostly in the elbow joint, the knees nodes, the skip joints, and a kind of the breathlessness also appear across the body. These are very painful and produce a disability in the patient if they don't carry out a correct treatment.
Hemophilia is an inherited bleeding disorder in which blood does not clot properly. It is an inherited disease that is carried by the mother and passed on only to her sons. The treatment is lifelong, and according to the official release, diagnosis and treatment are free in this country. Freddy Morales, TeleSUR, Bolivia.
Now we go to Nature Amazing for a good living to know tango therapy against stress.
Tango is a dance of real Platense origin of slow movement and diversion of steps, executed by a linked couple, generally with accompaniment of a bandoneon on other instruments. It is cultured patrimony of Argentina, but it is also used in rehabilitation as an ally for interdisciplinary treatment. In tango therapy, kinesiology and music therapy strategies are combined for rehabilitation. It is a space especially designed for people who suffer from motor, tensional, memory difficulties, or who suffer from difficulties in social skills and anxiety disorders. Even professionals dedicated to this discipline assure that it helps patients with cancer or diabetes. This therapy can be carried out by dancing, watching artists dance, or even listening to their music. When dancing tango, two people melt each other embrace and navigate the dance floor as if they were one. These 9 units connect and force us to take a record of our own body and improve the bond with the other. In addition, dancing tango requires mental concentration, balance, and coordination.
This is the end of this broadcast. Let's stay connected through our digital platforms. On Instagram, you can find us at Guía Tu Cuerpo TeleSUR, in X at Guía Tu Cuerpo TLS, and at Gflores TeleSUR, my account in this network. We also received your message through the email guiatucuerpo@telesurtv.net, as we always tell you. So just typing to us, remember that on YouTube you can find us previous broadcasts. I'm Jelani Flores. It will be until next time.
Follow the most important global events through a comprehensive perspective. With a team of journalists in 25 locations around the world to convey our people's reality. From the South. Weekdays. Only on TeleSUR.
From the South is part of the TTTL of Trinidad and Tobago. We are grateful to be part of this television house and to be able to share news from around the world, from Monday to Friday. We keep connecting borders, because TeleSUR always gives more.
Deep gazes filled with struggles and stories. Struggles that transcend generation. Know the deepest realities through its protagonists on TeleSUR documentaries. Sunday. Only on TeleSUR.
El mundo se mueve constantemente y todos los días se generan nuevos sucesos. Se mueve la geopolítica mundial. Nos preguntamos qué hay detrás de cada acontecimiento, cuáles son las consecuencias y cómo nos afectan. Ante estas preguntas, buscaremos poner el punto en la I.
For me, TeleSUR is an example of resilience because we have faced many difficulties in all areas. We are still here. It is also creativity from our content to the strategies we use to reach the screen every day. We are more than just a TV station. We are the communication link between Latin American borders, and we showcase the reality of our continent to the world. It is a sacrifice, but it is worth it, as everything that is made to last.
Every year, thousands of people leave their homeland to reach new horizons. A reality of those people who struggle for their freedom. Know the diverse causes of those who live between borders. Thursdays, only on TeleSUR.
Hola, soy Aisa García. Tú y yo tenemos una cita cada semana para conocer tradiciones, costumbres, valores, sonidos y ritmos, símbolos y el gran abanico de las expresiones culturales que nos forman y que tienen origen en el alma de los pueblos y nos dan identidad. Esto y más te contamos en Vidas, cada viernes, solo por TeleSUR.
Deep gazes filled with struggles and stories. Struggles that transcend generation. Know the deepest realities through its protagonists on TeleSUR documentaries. Sunday. Only on TeleSUR. Every year, thousands of people leave their homeland to reach new horizons. A reality of those people who struggle for their freedom. Know the diverse causes of those who live between borders. Thursdays, only on TeleSUR.
El mundo se mueve constantemente y todos los días se generan nuevos sucesos. Se mueve la geopolítica mundial. Nos preguntamos qué hay detrás de cada acontecimiento, cuáles son las consecuencias y cómo nos afectan. Ante estas preguntas, buscaremos poner el punto en la I.
In a world that doesn't stop, we give you space to keep up to date. Take a moment, breathe, and take care of your physical and mental health. Balance your well-being and guide your body. Only on TeleSUR.
Follow the most important global events through a comprehensive perspective. With a team of journalists in 25 locations around the world to convey our people's reality. From the South. Weekdays. Only on TeleSUR.
What's his name? George Floyd!
Hola, soy Aisa García. Tú y yo tenemos una cita cada semana para conocer tradiciones, costumbres, valores, sonidos y ritmos, símbolos y el gran abanico de las expresiones culturales que nos forman y que tienen origen en el alma de los pueblos y nos dan identidad. Esto y más te contamos en Vidas, cada viernes. Solo por TeleSUR.
Deep gazes filled with struggles and stories. Struggles that transcend generation. Know the deepest realities through its protagonists on TeleSUR Documentaries. Sunday. Only on TeleSUR. Every year, thousands of people leave their homeland to reach new horizons. A reality of those people who struggle for their freedom. Know the diverse causes of those who live between borders. Thursdays, only on TeleSUR.
El mundo se mueve constantemente y todos los días se generan nuevos sucesos. Se mueve la geopolítica mundial. Nos preguntamos qué hay detrás de cada acontecimiento, cuáles son las consecuencias y cómo nos afectan. Ante estas preguntas, buscaremos poner el punto en la I.
In a world that doesn't stop, we give you space to keep up to date. Take a moment, breathe, and take care of your physical and mental health. Balance your well-being and guide your body. Only on TeleSUR.
Follow the most important global events through a comprehensive perspective. With a team of journalists in 25 locations around the world to convey our people's reality. From the South. Weekdays. Only on TeleSUR.
What's his name? Joyful!
Hola, soy Aisa García. Tú y yo tenemos una cita cada semana para conocer tradiciones, costumbres, valores, sonidos y ritmos, símbolos y el gran abanico de las expresiones culturales que nos forman, que tienen origen en el alma de los pueblos y nos dan identidad. Esto y más te contamos en Vidas, cada viernes, solo por TeleSUR.
Deep gazes filled with struggles and stories. Struggles that transcend generation. Know the deepest realities through its protagonists on TeleSUR Documentaries. Sunday. Only on TeleSUR.
Everyone dances, and it's true. Each of us has moved to music at least once in our lives. Hence, the statement that dance is a language understandable to everyone without translation. Is it true? Let's figure it out. In the south of East Siberia, next to Lake Baikal, lives one of the most exotic peoples of Russia, Buryats. Once their culture has deeply intertwined with the customs of neighboring Mongolia, and that had a strong effect on their lifestyle and cuisine. Nevertheless, they've strongly kept their individuality in choreography. I'll leave my co-host here. Thank you very much. Let's go visit our protagonists. I don't get a single word. Boltogoy. I learned this word. I have to... Yes, you receive in both hands, that's right. And now, before tasting it, dip your right ring finger and splash 3 times. Where to? Upwards. 1, it is a rite of offering to the spirits. 2, 3. And now you can taste it. What is it? It's milk. Milk. Yes, traditional white food the most respected guests are greeted with.
Please receive our hadak. Now touch your forehead with it. It means you accepted it.
And it means?
It's a sign of respect. You can put it around your neck or put it in your pocket.
Yes, let me fold it and put it in my pocket. Thank you very much. Remember, it is mandatory to take the bowl with both hands. This way, the guest expresses their respect to the house owners and the house itself. Yes, another curious thing is that the yurt must be entered in a particular way. Tell me please, what way? The threshold must always be stepped over, never stepped on. What happens if you step on it? Stepping on the threshold means insulting the house and the owner, and the entire family.
Let's go inside.
Of course, thank you, with pleasure. Please tell me, why is the yurt the best house for the Buryats? This is the best house because in the past, the Buryats used to live as nomads when they had to constantly move following livestock, all their herds and flocks. And it's easy to set up and take down. Yes, and you need an hour to disassemble the yurt and same time to assemble it. And what is the main supporting structure of the yurt? Those are the pillars that stand in the center, in the middle there. Yes, around the hearth. Hearth is the most central part of the yurt, where most of the life revolves around. It's a place for cooking and heating the entire dwelling. Usually, there were two pillars called tenge on both sides of the hearth. They'd hold this chimney circle called tuonno. These two pillars would hold the circle and the unya poles would follow down from its forming the roof. On the opposite side, the poles would lean on this lattice wall. It is made of crisscrossed planks. Later, it was all covered with felt from top to bottom and fastened with various ribbons. I suspect that this one can't be set up and taken down quickly. Such a large one, of course not, but a small one, easily. Look, Russian people always... I even remember my grandma. There was always this red corner, an honored sacred place with an icon. Everything was very beautifully decorated, and in a yurt, there are no corners. Sorry. Is there such a sacred place here? Yes, there is. What is it? This place is called Hoyamor. Hoyamor. It's the northern part of the yurt behind the hearth. It's the most protected part of the yurt. We enter from the south. Yes, the north is this way. There we set our Buddhist altar. Shamanist Buryats keep their various amulets. Are you shamanist or Buddhists? It's a complicated question. A bit of both. 50-50 yes. The western side from the entrance is the male side. The eastern part of the yurt is the female side. Various kitchenware was also placed there. Which way are we going to now? We'll go there. Is it not prohibited? No. Will the women let us go there? Of course they will let us. Let's go. Hello. Sanbaina.
Sanbaina, hello.
Sanbaina?
Sanbaina.
Yes, it means greetings in Buryat. Is it similar to the Mongol language? Yes, those are closely related languages. Therefore, we have a lot in common. Now we're at a table and Serafima Radnaeva greets us here. She cooks very tasty buzi, a Buryat dish, and she'll tell you about Buryat cuisine. Buzi, is that right?
Yes, buzi, or some people call them pozi.
Pozi?
Yes, they can be called a hit of Buryat cuisine, the most popular dish loved by everyone.